Hi there, and welcome to Bourbon Turntable. We are the show that blends the love of whiskey with the love of music. And with me tonight, as always, is Drew Crawley. Drew, how are you, sir?
I'm doing well, my friend. How about yourself?
I'm doing really well, too. I'm about to get really a whole lot better when we start tasting some of the stuff that Blake sent us. But we'll get to that in just a second. Benjamin Eves, how are you tonight, sir?
Doing well, doing well.
Good, good. You ready to taste some ryes from Seelbach?
I'm always ready to taste rye. So
All right, and our guest tonight is Blake Reber. Blake is he runs a company called Seelbach, and he runs a blog and Facebook page called Bourboner. Blake, welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Should be a lot of fun. Yeah, I feel like anytime there's a 4 rye lineup, it's going to be a good time. But you throw some music choices in too, and it's even better.
Yes, absolutely. So we have a very important announcement, and then we will get on with the rest of the show.
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Don't forget to comment if you're watching live in the chat. Leave a comment down below afterwards. Always remember that thumbs up.
Thank you very much, Mike. We appreciate your voice talents as always. So we are going to start right before we talk with Blake about his background. We're going to go ahead and we're going to pour one of these samples that we have, and we're going to start with the Prideful Goat. So we will take a pour of that Prideful Goat. Blake, tell us a little bit about Prideful Goat.
Yeah, so Prideful Goat, they're out of Texas, Gulf Coast distillers. They made a big splash early on. They had their Prideful Goat. It was a 15-year bourbon, and this is their first rye release. So it's one they're I guess naming Baby Goat. Even though it's 6 years old, still, I guess it's a baby compared to the 15-year. It's not too young, but it's on the younger side. So Baby Goat. They were kind of going after a little bit of, not want to say a lower price point either, because I think it's still $65. But wanted it to be a little more accessible. Yeah, $65. So they didn't want to put big price tag on it. It's barrel proof MGP, the 95.5 rye mash bill. So to me, it's like quintessential 95.5 MGP. You just you get a lot of different notes, but you do get some of the mint. You get a little bit of the herbal notes, and there's good spice on it. I definitely get a little bit of sweetness. I always like a little more sweetness in my ryes over just I don't want to chew double mint gum or anything like that. So I think it hits a good balance with all of those.
Yep.
Now, Blake, you and I have something in common. We were both accountants by trade. So
it's a dangerous game.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Maybe your clients are the mob. I don't.
Yeah. No. That's what I tell people. I'm like, well, I got into drinking. 10 years of public accounting will do that to you. It's the real reason I got into bourbon.
So how does one go from being in public accounting to doing what you do now?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I often ask myself. It's I don't know. I've always found myself if I find a hobby or something I'm interested in, I just really want to dive in and dig and figure out everything there is to know. And as I think all four of us would agree, bourbon and whiskey in general is it's a rabbit hole. The more you dig, the more you learn, and there's always something new, cool, and exciting. So yeah, I mean, I was doing public accounting, just kind of started the bourboner thing as a fun little, I was drinking, trying different stuff, pretty active on the Reddit bourbon group back in the day, and all the Facebook groups, obviously, and just it kind of evolved from there. It was like, well, if I'm having these questions coming into bourbon from outside of Kentucky, I'm sure there's a lot of other people in the same boat who, they didn't grow up with the heritage. They didn't grow up around distilleries. They didn't, right. I was an adult before. Well, I think most people are adults before they visit distilleries, but, in my 30s before I really started visiting distilleries and that kind of stuff. Yeah. And so, bless you. And, it was just, that's where like a lot of like the Buffalo Trace antique collection release maps came from, the mash bill
Right.
breakdowns, because a lot of times I do tastings or be drinking with friends, and it's like, oh, which Four Roses recipe is this? And it's like, man, there should just be a chart where I could see all of them at once.
Right.
And so that's where the accountant mind really came into the bourbon world. Is like, I like to see everything in a spreadsheet in one spot, color choreographed, and
Right.
yeah,
Right.
may not be
And
beautiful, but it looks correct in my mind. So
yes, other accounting bourbon enthusiasts around the world and myself, thank you. So
it's funny. I was at a Four Roses tasting one time, and the guy said, "Is the O or the B the high rye?" I'm like, "Oh yeah." And he goes, "Are you googling your own website?" I'm like, "Yeah, I don't remember all this stuff. That's why I did the post, so I can." Pretty sure it's the E, but it's
um, so you started Seelbach then
Mhm.
when?
Yeah, so Seelbach started in July of 2018. So we're coming up on 4 years
Mm-hmm.
of the official launch. So I've been doing, man, I think Bourboner, the site started about 2020 or 2012. The blog started, I believe it was around spring 2013-ish. Or it may have been August, but I need to get those dates straight in my mind. But anyway, so started the Bourboner Pro group where we are doing some barrel picks,
Mm-hmm.
8 to 10 a year, maybe 12 in a really busy year, and was approached by a group that had an online retail site in a store in Chicago and said, "Hey, we're looking to sell. Would you be interested?" And I'm like, "Well, I don't really want to run your business, but I may be interested in the DC license." And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, that was late 2017, and then kind of took about 6 months or so to get the products in that I wanted in, and just built up from there. And
Wow.
it's funny looking back, it's like all the products that we sell a lot of now, and only about one of them was still or was on the site at the beginning. It's all names I just didn't even know whenever I was first starting, but
Right.
Right.
kind of saw this wave of people where they wanted something a little different, a little unique, focus on barrel picks. And I've seen it just with the Pappy and the antique collection release maps. Everybody wants something special, but nobody's getting those bottles anymore.
Right.
Or at least, the people who want something cool, unique, and, something they can share with friends and tell a story. There's just way too many of those people out there for, just Buffalo Trace limited products, or even just Four Roses or
Right.
birthday bourbon. So there is this market for people to come in and have something cool with a good story that tastes really good, and bring something different to the market.
Okay. All right. So guys, we've had a little bit of time with this Prideful Goat. What are you
Yep.
thinking?
The MGP profile stands out. I mean,
Mhm.
Right.
most of us that have been doing this for a little while would probably recognize that. But there's a really good, like a blueberry note kind of to it, kind of on the lighter, fruity, aromatic side of a thing.
Mhm.
Not citrus, but kind of in that
Mhm.
little tartness to it. I really dig it.
Yeah, I think for me, Kevin, we had this conversation earlier today. I think a lot of MGP product, especially once it hits that 6-year mark, really takes some major strides forward.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And this one is just showcasing that really well. There's that herbal eucalyptus that you typically get off that MGP rye. But for me, I can see that blueberry note, but I get like a orange oil citrus kind of thing going on there too.
Yeah, I
Along with
think
a little
that's the
chocolate.
interesting one about this. MGP's it's a mixed bag at times. I've
Mhm.
had some 4-year-old ryes that I thought were fantastic, and some 8-year-old that I've thought were bad. But it's
Right.
it's it can be a little bit roll of the dice. But man, I think they did a good one with this blend.
Yeah.
I think this is a good one. I I do get a lot of the herbal notes in it, and I get a little bit of that citrus as well. But it definitely is recognizable as MGP, which I'm not saying that as in a negative way. I'm just
Right.
saying that it has that familiarity to it, and that is I guess the really young MGP, you'll get a dill note in there, but as it gets a little past 4 or 5 years, that kind of goes away, and you get a different kind of herbal note to it, and I think that's what you got here. So,
Yep.
and I think it's a pretty fair price point too for what we're talking
which
about.
We've all been in this long enough to think about fair price points and what that means. So it's always tough.
Sure.
I'm sure we've gotten bottles for $65, 5-8 years ago that are now selling for thousands. It's a moving target for sure, but
Right.
I don't know. I always look at price point too, and it's like with inflation and everything, guys, this isn't a whiskey industry problem. This is everything's going up, but it's an interesting market for sure.
Yeah. So the next one we're going to go to is this Ragtime Rye, barrel number 379, which is has that Bracetto rye in it. And
yep.
That is the Writer's Rye, correct?
Correct. So this is one that we did with so Aaron Goldfarb, who he wrote the book Hacking Whiskey. He had messaged me and another writer, Robert Simonson, who you can see them both on the sticker.
Right.
Robert wanted to do a barrel pick, and I'm like, well, heck yeah, I love doing barrel picks. We can make something work there. So we ended up going to New York Distillers in Brooklyn, and Alan Katz runs the place. And to be honest, I've seen Ragtime on shelves in the past and probably tried it here or there, but just in all honesty, hadn't paid him a ton of attention. So we sit down at this tasting, and he's got all the 200 mLs lined up, and there's probably like 8 or 9 of them. And I start looking at all the distillation dates, and I'm like doing the math in my head, thinking these are all like 6, 7, 8-year-old rye whiskeys. Yeah. Like, where did this come from? He's like, yeah, we've got a decent supply of this. And I'm like, seriously? So then we start trying through them, and we get to this one, which is the Bracetto. So I think I've got a picture somewhere. I should have sent it to you, but so the Bracetto it's a larger, I guess, grain essentially. And so it was kind of a mix between two different varietals, and there's all this farming lingo behind it, or reasoning behind why they mix these two to get the Bracetto, but really just adds almost like a malty or like chocolatey note that I feel like I haven't gotten from rye. So whenever we were tasting through, that became the Writer's Fuel or the Writer's Rye for those two guys.
Yeah, when I first noticed this, to me, it was like a malty note really hit right off the top. And I was looking at that malt percentage. I'm like, well, it's 12%, but that's really coming out really strong.
Well, that's what I asked them. I was like, did you do a malted rye? Because I think like Starlight does some malted rye and maybe a few others. He's like, nope. It's just the rye and a little bit of malt in there, which was just kind of crazy to me.
Yeah.
So this is New York Distilling Company is a new one on me, and I was excited to try this, and very good. I didn't realize that they were getting whiskey of that age out of New York like that. So that's.
And with their license in New York, it's pretty cool. So I think it's like 75% of the grains have to come from the state of New York for them to have that farmer's distiller's license.
Right.
And so it's basically 100, I think. Maybe the barley may come from somewhere else, but which that whole grain to glass thing or
right. Do they call it an Empire Rye designation? Is that
correct? Yep. Yeah. So it falls under Empire Rye. So there's several different New York distillers that came up with the Empire Rye. Finger Lakes is in there. They're in there. Copper Sea's in there. Several others, but basically, as we see a lot, trying to get their own classification.
Sure.
And it's focused on the rye, just being all from New York and that kind of stuff.
Right. Sure. Now, this has a really mash, or what I call a grain forward kind of profile to it that for me, especially in craft whiskeys, kind of sets it apart. I actually really enjoy that. If you like that kind of thing, that's really, this presents really well. So
Mhm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Mm.
Now, Blake, you mentioned Aaron, who's the hacking whiskey thing is kind of your shtick, home blending, home experiments. I found you on the r/bourbon thread 6-7 years ago with Poor Man's Pappy, and that post and kind of all that shenanigans that went into that. Is
Yeah.
that still something that you're engaging with now that you've kind of found this love for craft whiskey and doing the whole Seelbach thing? Are you still doing your own experiments at home, or is that something that was just kind of
Yeah,
part
so
of your pursuit and where you are now?
I still play around with that some, and the Poor Man's Pappy was a fun one just because I feel like that was maybe it had a little controversy on Bourboner before that, but that was the one that I'm really like, oh man, people don't like this. But it was, it ended up being good. I always tell people, I'm like, I never took credit for the blend, but I may take credit for Poor Man's Pappy because I didn't see any figured out on the blend. But it's fun. I think it definitely pushed it forward in some people's minds of what Weller really was, which is pretty cool to see. I was on a random Buffalo Trace tour. A buddy of mine had set it up, and we just happened to go, and Freddie's doing it, and he's talking about Weller, and he was like, yeah, some guy on the internet said you can blend two Wellers together, and I thought my buddy was setting me up. I was like, oh, I wrote that article. He's like,
Yeah.
really? Yeah. I was like, yeah, it was on Bourboner. He was like, oh, that kind of screwed up our projections. I'm like, well, that's giving it way too much credit. Like it was bound to happen. I may have, thrown a small bit of gasoline on it, but
Right.
the forest fire was already there.
Right.
So it's Blake's fault. Anyone who has any questions, it's
I was like,
Blake's
actually, I'll take my sales commission. So just here's my address. And no, but so I tried to, I think on the blending side now, all of that stuff was really important doing that at home, because now with a lot of what we're doing with Seelbach is these small batches. So we'll do exclusive blends and that kind of stuff. And it just gives a framework for like what works together. While I may not blend as many different bottles now, a lot of it, we just did a Nashville Barrel Company bourbon and rye blend, and it just really helps to have a knowledge of like, okay, this is spice, this is oak, this is sweet. How are these going to work together in the blend? And I've like done already a little bit of homework on that part.
Sure.
So how do you find the distilleries that you want to include on Seelbach? Because these are not, for the most part, they're not big name distillers. I mean, how do you locate them other than annoying people such as myself emailing you?
No, but that's perfect. I mean, and I think we've brought on everyone you've suggested so far. So actually, I've got my Stumpy samples right over here. Maybe we'll crack on those. But no, I mean, I think that's a part of it. Like y'all just in the community a lot between podcast and sites and Instagram and all that. Seeing that some of it's inbound. But that gets hard. It's usually much better. It's like hiring a new employee. If somebody you trust says, hey, this person's great, you need to hire them, that's a whole lot easier than just throwing something up on Indeed.
Right.
So that's the main way we come across stuff these days. And it's been slow growth. I mean, we've just had constraints, whether we like it or not, but I think it's helped with our selection. You didn't come on day 2 and there's 10,000 different products. You came on day 3 and there was like 5,000 and 4,000 were sold out, or it's but just whether it was warehouse space or just being able to turn stuff around, we kind of just had that slow growth, and I just think it helps with the quality of the products we carry.
Okay. So, guys, we've had a little bit of time on this Rider's Rye. Ben's talked about it being a little malty and grain forward. Drew, any thoughts?
Yeah, I get almost a little bit of kind of a hay kind of a note. Reminds me of being, on the farm growing up, kind of a thing, in the back of a truck, unloading bales of alfalfa, kind of a thing. So that
Walking through the
that I
golden
like.
fields. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I would agree. It's definitely kind of the cereal forward thing.
Mhm.
The thing that popped up to me, and this is our, hashtag Fat Kid tasting note, is Honey Nut Cheerios.
Mm.
Mhm.
That's actually really.
That's
I feel like I may add that to the product page now. That's
Yep.
actually really good. I feel like
that honey, that kind of
Mhm.
honey oat note, that for me, that's what the finish just goes on. I mean, I'm sitting here, it's been a while
Yep.
since I've taken a sip, and it's still just lingering, and it's that honey sweetness that's hanging around, and enjoying the hell out of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's good.
I actually get a little bit of smokiness on the nose. It's pretty subtle, but I think it's there. And then and some dark chocolate on the palate as well.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, it's always fun to hear other people talk about it because you're like, oh man, like I didn't verbalize it like that, but that's like exactly what I'm getting. It's
Mhm.
it's fun to hear people talk about it, and that you're not like, oh man, this sucks, Blake. What were you thinking? So that
Yeah, no,
or maybe
that's
you'll tell me that
fantastic.
offline,
Yeah.
but
And
no, but it is. I think that's the fun part um about craft whiskey in general is it used to be my example was Four Roses of if you
Mhm.
want to craft whiskey that tastes like Four Roses, just go buy Four Roses because the single
Right.
barrels on the shelf, you may be able to grab it at Costco for $50. So go do that. But there's other profiles that these guys are creating that maybe you may like even better or just can
Mhm.
appreciate. So I think that's where the appreciation kind of
Right.
comes in.
So with Seelbach, where do you see this going for you?
Yeah, I mean, the goal is always to just grow it as large as it can go.
Mhm.
Early on I had projections or ideas of what I thought it would be, and we're past that, so it's always good to see that. So
Mhm.
I'm I'm kind of my mindset is always would rather just keep my head down and working at it and pushing and seeing how far it can go rather than just saying like, oh, we want to be at X in 2 years. Like, I don't know, we could be double that, we could be half of that, but as long as we're kind of grinding and
Right.
doing the right things, I'd rather be pushing it forward like that. So I think there's still a ton of room for great
Mhm.
craft distillers. If you look at kind of the hockey stick that was happening in the mid 2010s ish, so from like 13 to 18, I think there was another 2000 craft distilleries added.
Right.
There's probably a lot of good whiskey that's going to be hitting the market here pretty soon.
Mhm.
I had a distillery out of California hit me up and they're like, "Hey, we want you to try this product." I'm like, "Okay, send it." And I tried it. It was 100% rye, and it was grain to glass, so they grow all their own grain,
Mhm.
kind of like the Frey Ranch style. It was fantastic. It was like 7 years old, and I asked him like, I don't want this to be offensive, but how do I not know about you? How have I never
Right.
heard of your product? And they're like, well, just to be honest, we had our small market in California, and within the last 6 months, we decided to start expanding.
Right.
And that's the kind of stuff that excites me. So hopefully growing with a lot more of those type of products
Right.
over the next 3 to 4 years.
Because there's a mindset out there among a lot of people that it's got to be from Kentucky to be bourbon, and which is fundamentally wrong. But
Mhm.
there are a lot of people that don't venture past the heritage distillers, and they're missing out. So,
Yeah.
but keep standing in line and paying through the nose for these whiskeys that you can't get, and we'll just count on Blake to bring us some more unique and interesting stuff from the craft side of things, and we'll just have a good time with it.
Right.
Exactly.
Because one of the things that I do from time to time, and this is in all sincerity, it's not just because you're on here. I'll go to your website and I'll just scroll through everything that you've got and just see, okay, is there something new on there that I've not heard of before?
Mhm.
Is there a new pick that you've got? that looks interesting, because it really is a bit of an educational page to people. If you're not really deep into the world of craft whiskey, you can learn a lot just by going to your website. And I think what you're doing with this is you're one of the best friends that craft distillers have.
Mm.
And that you've made a real difference for a lot of people. Turner Wathen from Rolling Fork Rum was on here a few weeks ago, and he said, we sell more through Seelbach than we do off the shelves in the liquor stores. And so he couldn't say enough good things about it. So I know
Well,
a lot of people appreciate
that's
it.
a humbling compliment. That's always the goal, but I mean, yeah, that's always great to hear. It's like you put a lot of work into something and you hope you get that kind of feedback. So it's yeah, no, that's much appreciated. So thank you.
Yeah. Well, we're going to kind of bring this side of the show to an end. We'll talk a little bit more about Seelbach and some of what's going on there as we're talking with you about music and tasting these other two ryes that you sent us. But we're going to do a brief timeout and talk about Stave and Bean. Now, Blake, I don't know if you know John Waddell, but if you don't, you need to.
I've got some in my office. I've got
Awesome.
Stave and Bean in my office.
Awesome.
There you go.
All right. Ben, I know that you are our resident coffee geek. So tell everybody about Stave and Bean.
Stave and Bean is a company started by our friend Corey, as well as John, who works at Kentucky Peerless. And they're sourcing really high quality beans from specific locations. They're aging these in different barrels, whether it be bourbon barrels, rye barrels, Curacao, just a lot of different things. They're also blending some of these. They have it's like a side creation called their cocktail creations, like the Mai Tai and the Manhattan and stuff like that. That just, I don't know, they're amazing. But yes, I am a coffee geek, and they are some of the best espresso shots I have pulled through my machine have been from Stave and Bean. They're fantastic. And as far as barrel aged beans go, they're the absolute best that I've had anywhere. But there's everything about this, what they're doing top to bottom is very high quality, from the sourcing of the beans to they're very hands-on with monitoring the aging in the barrels to the roasting and getting these out. It's just well worth the investment if you're a coffee freak. So
look them up, staveandbean.com. Find them on Facebook at Stave and Bean, Instagram, and following John Waddell. I think it's Sir John Waddell on Instagram. That's always a good follow. He has some great content, and you find pictures such as this. So,
and if you're around Louisville, I think they're starting to hit some of the Krogers around there as well.
Cool. So. They are absolutely. So, Stave and Bean, be sure to check them out. All right, so we'll flip over to side B of the show, and we're going to talk with Blake some about music. I'm sure we'll have some more conversation about Seelbach and what he's doing there. But what we're trying next, I believe, Blake, is this 4-Gate Batch 13, correct?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
And that is the River Kelvin Rye.
Yeah, so this one's really interesting. I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of 4-Gate or tried it, especially most that are in Kentucky, but good group of guys that started this company, and, they have a premium on their product. And so far, I haven't been let down by one of their bottles. So it's really interesting because this is 8-year-old MGP blended together. So it's kind of a fun progression of going, 6-year MGP to 6-year and some months distilled in New York rye, and then going 8-year MGP, and then we'll bounce back to the fourth sample. I won't give away the secret just yet, but it's just going back and forth between, like, I think the mindset that whenever I first started Seelbach was like, you better search hard to find anything that is like just good for craft. And
Right.
I don't really think we're at that point anymore. I think
No.
there's plenty that you can throw into a blind tasting and it's going to outperform or just, hang in there and, hold its own. So I think that's why it's fun to do these side-by-sides is, this is the most expensive bottle in the lineup, but I think it's really good too. So it gives people some different, different options when they're looking to purchase.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. So
I
we're
don't
going to
think.
go
Go
ahead,
ahead,
Drew.
Kevin. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, if you handed this to me, blind in a lineup, I don't think I'd pick this out as a rye. First of all, it is
Yep.
so much of that like kind of watermelon Jolly Rancher thing. You've got a little bit of like a banana pudding, like vanilla wafer type, like confectionery note. Man, that's fantastic. It's well worth the premium. I've not gotten into a lot of the Four Gate products, but what I have had, this one included, this is a bottle I have on my bar. This is pretty outstanding stuff and worth the little bit of the price tag increase.
Yeah, I'll say that the actual bottles that I have at Four Gate have come from Seelbach so far. So
Yeah.
Love to hear that too. Which they also have I felt like this was going to throw off the tasting too much if I added it, but it's almost the same rye, different blend, but about the same age. But they put it into their split stave barrels, which is like regular char and toasted, and it looks almost like a zebra on the inside. And that adds just like this whole other dessertiness on the nose that I love. I always tell people, I'm like, I should say I like spice and I like leather and tannins, and like, give me something that's like toasted marshmallows and nougat. Like, I'm all over it.
And I think that fits a lot of the Four Gate profile. Everything I've
Yep.
had from them is in the more, I want to say almost decadent style.
It is. They
of
try to
whiskey.
balance that with their proof more than anything else. I feel like, they're going to give you something sweet, but it's going to be like 120 proof or 115 proof. And it's,
the kind of thing that gets you in trouble very easily.
Right.
Oh, this is sweet. This is delicious. And then it's, oh, wait, what's, wait, what happened?
three glasses later and you're, tweeting out great whiskey commentary.
So we'll sip on this just a little bit, but while we're doing that, Blake, one of the things that we ask most of our guests is, what was your first album? Do you remember what your first album was?
I do. And it actually, it really came full circle for me a couple months ago. So my first album was a Clay Walker CD that I had gotten for Christmas. And so Fred Minnick, I had gotten him a bottle of the Seelbach, and he's like, hey, here's the guest that I have coming up. I'm not going to review it, but I'll send it to them. We'll talk about it on the show. And gave me the list, and one was Clay Walker. I'm like, man, you have got to put this in front of Clay Walker. He put it with like a smoke wagon and something else, and he ended up liking the Seelbach the best. I'm like, best compliment I've ever gotten.
There you go.
Oh man, I still remember going on like long road trips, and it'd be, I think I had 2 CDs. It was like Toby Keith and Clay Walker, and just 19 hours up to Illinois on repeat over and over.
That's awesome. Now, do you remember what your first concert was?
So it's funny. I was not that big of a concert goer. I don't think I went to my first like real live concert, at least that I remember, until, well, maybe college. I didn't go, there'd be like some fairs in town and maybe we'd stop by that. But it was either Tim McGraw and Faith Hill or Corey Smith. And I don't remember which came first, but I was definitely in college for both of them. And I wish some people have like, oh, I saw Led Zeppelin before they were big and in a small, and mine's like, Corey Smith is good, I guess, but it's a little bit of street cred. I don't know if Faith Hill's getting me a lot of credibility on this show, but
no, absolutely.
We're fans.
Yes, absolutely. And for the record, nobody saw Led Zeppelin before they were big. Okay.
Yeah. But I feel
they were big from the beginning.
Everybody always has somebody where it's like, oh, U2 was playing at a concert, or although I am from Jacksonville, and so a lot of
Yeah.
older guys around here will have like the Leonard Skinner stories. It's
Yes.
like, oh yeah, Leonard Skinner or Ronnie Van Zant's sister was my babysitter, or
Uh-huh.
Right.
I do not have that. I guess I was in the Limp Bizkit days of Jacksonville, but a little bit different.
That is a little bit different than Leonard
Yeah.
Skinner. Yes.
Yeah.
We actually did have a show where we were talking with a guy named Austin Huff, who now is a DJ up in Chicago,
Mhm.
and he was talking about how one of his babysitters was the sister of a contemporary Christian music guitarist that we all knew who it was. So that was kind of the babysitter's story there. So
Every now and then you get a good one. I
Yeah.
did not, although I think Drew and I have talked about this maybe on Instagram or something before, about my early CDs where it was like I could have a few country CDs, and then like I could have all my Christian CDs that our
Uh-huh.
parents approved of, and then I'd throw in like Notorious B.I.G. Life After Death that I would have to hide in the back.
Right.
It was
Yep.
there was no like real middle ground. It was
Very familiar with growing up like that. So
Yeah. Those Southern Baptist roots die hard.
yeah.
They do. Yeah, I don't recall who I was talking to the other day. We were talking about changing the song names in iTunes back when you could still do that.
Oh, yeah.
So when you were trying to, have illicit songs on your
Yep.
your
You
MP3 players back in the day, you could edit the titles.
Oh, I
That's
remember.
funny.
I mean, I think I was in college before I stopped, turning the radio to the Christian station after I got in the car. And I think my girlfriend, who's my wife now, was like, "Why do you do that every time?" I'm like, "I don't know. I had to do it growing up in high school, so I just, it's automatic to flip it back to 106.5."
The things we do. Yeah.
Good music, I'm sure I got a DC Talk CD around here
There
somewhere.
you go.
So
Absolutely. No, Jesus Freak is one of my favorite albums, regardless of genre. So
I have heard that live. They used to do
Yeah.
a big Orlando thing.
Yeah.
And then they used to come back to Liberty because they went to Liberty as
Yeah.
well and got kicked out. And
Yes. Now you went to Liberty, is that correct?
I did.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. It's
Yeah.
not most people in the bourbon industry's progression, but yeah, Liberty was an okay school, so it was good.
Well, and Liberty's up and coming on the sports side of things.
They
got a
are.
Yeah, they
really
do
good
well.
football program now. Yeah.
Yeah, may have a first round draft pick. Yeah, my brother played on the first basketball team to go to the NCAA tournament,
Mhm.
but now they've done it like 7 times. I'm like, you're not special anymore.
Of course you
Nobody
say that
cares
to your
anymore.
brother. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, guys, what are we getting on this four-gate? Drew threw out watermelon, Jolly Ranchers, and bread pudding. I'm getting some really nice citrus on here. Maybe like some candied citrus, candied orange or something.
Mm.
I was gonna say almost mandarin orange kind of.
Mm.
Yeah, it's always interesting with those. Just I think it kind of goes back to how good at MGP is at distilling. Even though
Right.
they probably haven't gotten the same credit as other places. I mean, do you think about the brands they've built and the different profiles they have, or the brands that other people have built for them? I guess I've still yet to have an MGP brand where I'm like, oh man, that's really good, but had a lot of good barrels from other places. So
Yeah.
How many of? Well, I'll get to that in a second. Ben, any other notes on this four-gate?
Some of the herbalness is a little bit toned down, but it comes
Yep.
through almost more of a spearmint to me, and it's a little bit more buried in there versus what some of the younger MGP,
Mhm.
the other that we've had.
It is interesting that there's so much MGP out there that you
Right.
can really make those comparisons between
Yep.
something that may be, 2, 3, 4 years old and something that may be 8 years old or older. And there are very stark differences. And you can, I think what we usually associate with the MGP profile, usually tends to be in the younger stuff.
Right.
But then you look at, say, for example, what Buzzard's Roost has done with a younger MGP rye.
Yeah.
It doesn't carry that, some of those traditional MGP notes to it. Is that fair statement?
Yep, I would agree.
Yeah, I would lean towards that too.
I'm biased, but I agree. So it's always weird selling it, and you're like, "Well, I'm not trying to like push it on you, but this is really good."
So, Blake, how many of the distillers that you work with are producing their own distillate, and how many are sourcing, like some of the stuff we've tasted here?
That's a good question. It'd probably depend on how I break it down, but I'd say it's probably about 40-60, 40 being blenders, 60 being distillers. And then we're working on a redesign now, but we've always had it split out just like that, so you got your blenders in one section, you can see all the distillers in the other section. But then you've got some that do both, so then it gets interesting, and it's just product by product, and we try to make sure we make that distinction on the page of which is which. Who is it? KO Distilling out of Virginia.
Yep.
Make a great bourbon. It's sourced from MGP, and they have a fantastic rye that is just really good, and they distill it. It's a little over 4 years old. So ASW of Atlanta is the same, and there's a lot like that. So
yeah, and that's something I really appreciate about your website, the fact that you can do a search and you can break down who's distiller and who's actually just blending or sourcing kind of thing, and that's really nice.
Right, and it's on there.
And I feel like that was something that was really hard to figure out 5-6 years ago, but thankfully, maybe because of Wade Woodard, I don't know, but bottling is labels are getting much better with the TTB, where they have to put that distilled in or make some kind of distinction, so and we just ask, and if they don't want to answer, we don't carry them, so makes it easier.
No, and I appreciate that. I respect that. I'd like it may not make a difference one way or the other in my decision as to what that distilling location is. But if people are not forthcoming with it, then I'm probably going to pass.
Yep, absolutely.
I had that conversation with one of our distributors from DC this week. He's like, look, like, I'm okay with some stuff. Like if you want to say you handcraft your distillate or whatever, use some terms. He's like, that's fine. But to say it's yours when somebody else did it, that's just not true. Like and I think we all kind of have that line. Like, you can make it sound artful and flowery language about how you work the barrels after you get them, but just say you got them from somewhere else.
Yeah.
Well, but I mean, even if like the Prideful Goat, if you read the label, it's got a little story on there about the goat and climbing the mountain, and they're a Houston-based distillery, so I don't know how many goats or mountains are there, but they are transparent about the fact that it was distilled in Indiana, and we pretty much know what that means, and that doesn't take away from the whiskey, and I think that we all really enjoyed that, but the fact that they've got a little story that goes with it, but they're also transparent. Cool, got no problem with that.
Right.
So from we're next going to the Ragtime Rye, the number 417 barrel. And so we'll take a pour of that and talk a little bit more about music here. So a lot of the things that you listed or you mentioned before were country artists. So you're a big country music fan, obviously.
Yeah, and kind of still in that same genre, more in kind of the folk country these days. Which it's I love all like and not that this is a small niche or hobby, but
Mhm.
I love when there's always this loyal enthusiast who it's like, well, all country music is terrible these days, and Florida Georgia Line's killing country, and it's like, well, like it's kind of like you can say that about anything. It's like, well, all bourbon is terrible, and I can't buy it these days.
Right.
It's like, but we just talked about like there's 1,000 other brands and distillers
Right.
you've never tried or given a shot to, and so that's kind of what I like about country music right now, because there's a lot of great artists out there, and it's yeah, I was telling somebody the other day, there's like 3 albums I have saved on my phone or on my Spotify for planes, and it's College Dropout, Kanye West, it's Taylor Swift's Folklore, and then Morgan Wade's Restless. And I'm like, I don't know how any of those 3 fit together, but it's just the ones where I'm like, if I'm throwing on noise canceling headphones and trying to zone out for an hour and a half, that's what I'm going to.
That's good stuff. Yeah. That Morgan Wade album is awesome.
Oh, it's incredible. I think I've probably listened to it like 45 times over the last few months, and I'm like, all right, at some point it's going to get old, but it just hasn't yet. So and she's coming to Jacksonville too.
Oh, I saw those dates go up. If you're a fan, do you like Zach Bryan?
Yeah.
At all? Yeah. His new single that came out yesterday is, well, I guess Friday.
Yeah.
Really, really good stuff. Yeah.
He's actually coming to, I think I need to look at that. I think it's St. Augustine, which is just 30 minutes south of me. And I was like, oh shoot, I got to put that on my calendar. But although it is fun now that concerts are starting to happen again, it was like Whiskey Myers is coming, Zach Bryan's coming, Morgan Wade and Chris Stapleton. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, I can't go to a concert like every other week, but it's good to see people back again.
Yes,
absolutely.
They are back.
So I don't want to interrupt discussion of the sample, but like I was curious, with Seelbach, you guys have the DC distribution license, and that plays a factor in how you're able to do what you do. What are you hoping to see as more and more states, pass shipping laws and things like House Bill 500 here in Kentucky? All those pieces of legislation come together. What does that mean for your business, and what do you hope to see out of legislation moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the pie in the sky is just opening up shipping from retailers to customers. But I think a good step for that is just to put distilleries on the same level of wineries. So if they want to ship direct, why is DCT or DTC different for a winery and a brewery than it is for a distiller? Like that just doesn't make much sense. So I think that's the first step, but hopefully it's ultimately where somebody can come to Seelbach and let that be the vetting place or the gathering place for all these different distillers, and they can buy and have that shipped directly to them.
Right.
It's whether that is, more of a national, hey, as long as you're under X amount of cases per year, you can ship, or I don't know what that looks like, but it's always funny to me when we get angry customer emails saying, I'm in New York. Why don't you ship to me? I'm like, look, I'd love to. Like, I'm in the business of selling things, but there's these laws and I don't want to get in trouble. And so, I think it is moving slowly. And I think it'll continue to move slowly. It may not have progressed as much as I would have liked to have seen whenever there was actual lockdowns and that kind of stuff. But I think it's at least top of mind for a lot of states and legislators.
Yeah, absolutely. I was curious as well, thinking about companies like Drizzly, there's always this kind of looming thing that we all think about with Amazon and drone delivery and all that kind of stuff. Do those kind of companies have an effect on you and what you're doing? Or are you going to be able to go along with whatever the, eventual distribution method is?
Yeah, no, I'm always fine with that, because my thing is we're building an audience and a base of people that love craft spirits and new and unique products, and kind of what Kevin said is exactly what we're looking for, where he'll go just scroll the page to see what's new, and so we try to always keep it fresh, and whether it's a barrel pick or an exclusive release or something like that, we'll always have that. So, everybody's worried that, I guess the monster is always Amazon of, Amazon's going to come and wipe everybody out.
Yeah.
But I still buy from plenty of things online that aren't Amazon. They're just, Nike's not doing its sneaker releases on Amazon. It's
right. And Amazon, I would think that they would be focused more on the big distillers, and hey, Amazon has Buffalo Trace. Okay, great.
the handles of Tito's and that kind of stuff.
Yes,
And it would,
absolutely.
I don't want to like nonchalantly blow it off. It could affect us, but it'll really affect, unfortunately, a lot of independent retailers. But that's where I think you've got to be a little more agile. The Total Wines of the world they'll figure it out. Unfortunately, the small mom and pop retailers, they may have a harder time just because, hey, if the guy can have it delivered, he's not driving 5 minutes when he's had too many beers.
Well, the small mom and pop retailers are already getting squeezed. They're getting squeezed by the heritage distilleries, and where they used to get 3 or 4 Four Roses picks in a year, now they're getting 0. And that's
not exactly dancing with the ones that brought them, but it is pretty disappointing to see. When somebody's been pushing the products and making believers out of these brands for years, and then all of a sudden it's like, sorry, now all your picks are going to the big box down the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So this Ragtime Rye, what are you guys thinking?
Chocolate wafer and spearmint.
So this is the one that's actually it's I think it's right at 7 years. I think they bottled it exactly on distillation date. But yeah, it was a little, or no, this one's 7 years 3 months.
Yeah,
it was the other one. But yeah, I almost got like this interesting like jalapeno note, or like just a spicier note that I don't get. And it was really all over the place,
right?
in a good way. Like it just kind of kept progressing. It wasn't
there's
necessarily out of balance. It was just,
right. No, there's a lot of complexity to this one. It's got a lot of
balance.
layers, and nice peppery kick on it too.
Yeah,
very much so.
Here's my tasting note, and nobody needs to hear this, but if you put red chili pepper on top of a stroopwafel, that's what I'm tasting right here.
My next question is, has that ever been your breakfast? Or
Could be.
That's the the hangover cure secret.
Right.
Well, we're gonna try it, and if it works, we're gonna sell it, and we may distribute it through Seelbach.
Yep, there you go. There you go. Although, so I had this was a while back, but I was making my own hot sauce. So I was fermenting the peppers in these like 375 glass jars. Well, then I needed something to blend in, and I was trying to do my own barrel strength 10 Four Roses recipes. And so it was not an easy thing to accomplish to get all 10 recipes back in the day. And so I wash out this hot sauce bottle and soap, everything, thinking it's good, pour all 10 recipes into it, just an ounce or so of each, let it sit for a few weeks to marinate, come back. It was like the worst fireball you've ever tasted, because the pepper was still in the glass, apparently.
Oh no.
It was like bourbon hot sauce. I'm like, dang it, I really screwed this up.
I'm just sitting here thinking, man, that's a waste of a lot of really good barrel strength Four Roses.
Those were the days. Not everything turned into poor man's pappy. There were some misses.
There's some cinnamon in this, maybe. It's very good. What can you tell us about New York Distilling Company while we're on that?
Yeah, so owner Alan Katz, just a good guy. I mean, I think they started in 2012. They're there in Brooklyn. They have some offsite storage, but they do pretty much all their distillation in Brooklyn. And I'll say this on the podcast because I think most of your listeners will appreciate it. But I had the conversation. I'm like, are you sure this is just $55? Like, you're selling me a 7-year-old craft distilled rye whiskey. I'm not missing something here, am I? He's like, nope, that's it, $55. I'm like, you may want to bump your prices up. It sounds bad, but we run into it on Seelbach where it's funny, lower selling or lower retail products don't do as well because you have to ship it. So the $25 bottle of vodka or whatever it may be, it just doesn't do as well because you have to pay $15 for shipping.
Right.
But if you're paying $100, you're like, 15 is not too bad. But nope. So we kept it there. And I think it's, one of those great deals that we'll look back at in 3 years and say, oh, remember when you could get this for that price? But hey, for now it's here, and glad it is. So
no, it's terrific.
They're doing predominantly rye though, pretty much all rye. And then they have like their gins. They're doing a barrel aged gin. They have a few other products like that. Really big in the cocktail scene in New York.
Okay.
I think that's their home base, and just now getting over the last couple of years. I think unfortunately COVID kind of pushed that forward for them of like, hey, we need to be outside the state too to get our products in the hands of other people. So, but I'm glad.
I'd love to make a Manhattan with this.
Yep.
Oh, wow. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
So you had, we mentioned the whole COVID pandemic thing. What kind of impact did that have on you?
Yeah. I mean, it was pretty crazy for us. I mean, we were extremely fortunate where it kind of, ramped up our business, and you never felt good about saying that, but it did. People were stuck at home. Thankfully we were able to hire a lot of, people and bartenders and service people in DC to say like, hey, look, if you're not working, we need help. So we were able to scale up that way, but it helped us get in front of a lot of people that we may not have seen before. I think just with all the home tastings, the virtual tastings. So yeah, we were extremely lucky there that people were turning to products like that Seelbach had to stay at home with and kind of dive deeper into.
Have you ever thought about doing a tasting event combined with a certain whiskey that you may be selling online? So, hey, if you come in, you buy this, then on such and such date, we're going to do a live tasting with you or with the distiller or somebody like that.
So we've done that a couple times. We like to do these sample kits. And so we've done them with Bardstown, with ASW. Actually, we've got one that's, I just happen to have it here, but we're going to be doing it with McKinsey. So they've got their bourbon rye pot still whiskey. So we're trying to do more of that. The problem always becomes is I may be the most unorganized person. And I'm like, yep, let's send it out. Let's schedule it. And then it's like, oh, shoot, that's tonight, right? So we're trying to get better about all that. Or just, figuring out, okay, 8 p.m. or 8 p.m. for East Coast is great, but you got people on the West Coast, and do we record it and then send it out? But I think that's always fun, and we're super appreciative whenever like we had Sam from Bardstown, she came on, so did their head distiller Nick Smith, had the ASW guys on, and then Chris from Nozier Bourbon, he did the nosing tasting kits for those. So we're trying to get more of that going on really the educational side, but it's been a little slower than I wanted, but hey, we're trying to make it work.
Because I remember it was a few years ago now, but I was on I got to do a barrel selection with you and Alan, and I think there were one or two other people on there, and I think you had put that out on YouTube or on Bourboner or something, but I thought that was a neat approach to take to it.
So now the 2022 goal was to For all barrel picks, it would be me and D, who's my general manager up there. We would get samples. We would review them live with hopefully the distiller or somebody at the brand for each barrel pick. We pick the barrel. It goes on sale. If you buy the bottle, we come back, 2 weeks after the fact and do a live tasting with everybody, answer any more questions,
Very cool.
and have everything going that cycle. We've gotten like steps 1 through 3 going somewhat. We gotta get that 4th step, but I think that's the fun part too, is because hearing somebody talk about samples, it's interesting. You want to hear them, and maybe it sounds good and entices you to buy, but then to go
Right.
back afterwards and review those same notes, review the product, and talk about it, I think is really cool and something not many people are doing.
Yeah. No, I would agree. I think that is interesting. So back to music for just a second. What is kind of your music home base? I mean, if you've got to say, okay, this is what I want to listen to. This is where I'm going to go back to time and time again. What is that for you?
Yeah. So right now, it's usually like early 2000s, late 90s hip hop, and then folk country is the current dichotomy. There's a lot of that in there, but then my Spotify is also kind of screwed up because I have 4 kids, and so it's like when the Sing 2 soundtrack and the Minions soundtrack plays over and over again, you start to get some weird things popping into those playlists. So
Right.
no, but I mean, I think that's where it is. I do really love music, and I wish I was more musically inclined because I feel like I'd have a better appreciation. But I do listen to a lot of music throughout the day, and that's kind of where I really enjoy things. It depends on the mood.
Sure.
If Notorious B.I.G. pops back on with like some early Mace, I'm trying to get pumped up for something. But if I'm trying to relax, who else is big on the playlist? I should have reviewed that a little. Bon Iver's been pretty big recently. Some of his older stuff I thought was just like, if I'm trying to focus, I can kind of tune in a little bit. But it doesn't like throw me off or throw me off my train of thought. So,
good.
those are all kind of up there for me.
Yeah. Is there anything when you're sampling barrels that you try to listen to music when you're doing that?
So it depends. So I'm kind of funny about that. If I'm really trying to think, I turn everything off.
Yeah.
Or it's got to be something that I don't know what it is.
Okay.
Or another trick, I forget where I heard this, but you put the same song on repeat, so then your brain tunes it out, but there's still like white noise essentially.
Right.
And so there's one Kendrick Lamar song I used to listen to just on repeat, and it was it was off of Section 80, but that those are kind of my tricks. It's like absolutely nothing, something I've never heard, or one song on repeat, and I'll do that at barrel picks sometimes. But I'm not too picky. I think, and Ben, you probably appreciate this, but with 4 kids, you can turn out a lot, and so
Yes, you can.
like the amount that I can just be in my own head for X amount of time is
Right.
it's not always great, but it works with the current situation.
Yep. I
My wife
100% concur with that, man.
gives me a hard time. Yeah, it's
tune a lot of things out. A lot of stuff goes on, and you're like, people are going at work or somewhere like, oh my God, how's that not bothering you? And I'm just like, what? I don't even hear it.
What was that? Yeah. But yeah, no, it's it is fun. Like the whole idea of pairing music and bourbon together, I think is interesting. Because I think a lot of people who dive deep into certain subjects, music's always one of them. It seems like as well. They may have a shoe collection, they may have like a card collection, but they probably have a lot of thoughts and opinions on music 9 times out of 10. So I like what y'all are doing, and I think it's really cool format. And I'm probably going to get blasted for my music choices, but
Nope.
it is what it is. It's
No, we are really all over the place, and
Yeah.
there's not a lot that we don't like. Bro country is probably one in the category of things that that none of us
There's
listen
a good
to.
consensus, right?
But I mean, Florida Georgia Line had their own, what was it, pecan flavored whiskey that hasn't been on the show yet.
I
We
didn't
didn't
notice
do
that on.
Rivulet.
I didn't notice it on Seelbach either, but
No. It's there's a place for everything. There's probably a lot of people drinking Fireball and peanut butter flavored whiskey. So
Right.
Yeah. So when Blake has a little bit of time to relax and the kids are in bed, may not be asleep, but they're in bed.
Yeah, but
and at that point they're in
locked
bed.
in. Yeah,
done, right? And you're sitting on your back porch or the patio, and you're pouring one of your favorite whiskeys. What are the things that you think? What are you listening to? What's great whiskey sipping music?
Yeah, so I've actually got a cigars playlist I go to that I've created on my own.
Awesome.
It's some throwback. There's something about the old school female artist I love in country music and smoking a cigar. So some old Reba, I really do enjoy that. What else is on there? There's like a lot of Martina McBride. There's it's a bit eclectic. Let's see what else we got on here. Yeah, Allison Krauss, Brad Paisley, Whiskey Myers. Okay, I feel better about some of these selections. A little bit of Lone Star, early CDs, but yeah, Tyler Childers, that's always a popular one. Clint Black. So that's usually my go-to.
Yeah.
It's like somewhat soothing because I feel like it reminds you of older days and you're kind of relaxing, you're not getting too wound up over it, but that's the go-to on that one.
Now you mentioned Allison Krauss. If you listen to either of the albums that she's done with Robert Plant,
yeah, I have listened to both of them, and they are both fantastic.
Yeah.
She's one where she's one where I'm like, is just fantastic, but always tell my wife, if Stevie Nicks ever came and said like, hey, you're the one, I'm like, hey, I'm sorry, like, I'll send alimony and child support, but me and Stevie are on the road. So she's like, Landslide is not that good. I'm like, you'll take that back right now.
Okay. Do we need to edit that out of the show? Or
yeah. Oh no, she's been told this multiple.
Okay. All right.
She knows if Reba or Stevie Nicks comes along, it's which that's where I think she feels very comfortable, and that being the only two that would make me.
I just didn't want this admitted into evidence in some sort of divorce trial. So, all right.
Which actually, yeah, because Allison or not Allison Krauss. No, she did play a Bourbon and Beyond, didn't she? I know Stevie Nicks played the first one, and I think Allison Krauss played a day that I had to leave, and was pretty upset by that one. But hopefully we'll be back to live music again in Kentucky.
Yeah. So next time you come up, if you have a minute, let us know. We'll get together.
Yeah.
Have a drink, listen to some music, and see what we can get into. But
one quick question for y'all: how do you listen to music these days? Are you old school? Still have a record player? Only on your phone, headphone specific?
99% of the time, I'm in the car.
Yeah.
Music. And usually it's through my phone. I have an Apple Music subscription. That's kind of my go-to for it. I don't really do Spotify or stuff like that. It's Apple Music because I'm an album guy. Like I have a handful of playlists I've made, but I get in tune with a specific artist and I hit an album and I want to just work through an album. I work through their whole library of stuff, and that's just kind of how I operate with it. But,
which is interesting because that doesn't happen much anymore, I feel like, and it's kind of disappointing.
Right.
You don't get the whole progression.
Right. That's me. I have a wish list set up on Amazon of some audio equipment, of a record player and speakers and all this that I want to get lined up and start getting more into playing some albums and stuff like that. But right now that tends to be my.
It's a podcast write-off, I think. I mean, I think that should be business expense.
Should be.
Absolutely, 100%.
There you
go. Your accountant just said that you could write it off.
Yeah. Don't take this clip to the IRS, but I think.
How about you, Drew?
Yeah, I'm probably very similar to Ben. I will do a Spotify playlist if I'm out and about, kind of throughout the day. Most of the time I'm trying to do the Discover Weekly thing. So, I trust the algorithm more than I trust myself to find things that I like. But then I also have a pretty extensive vinyl collection. So if there's an artist that I particularly fall in love with or has a memory involved in it, I'll go pick up that on vinyl. And then if I'm home, which is rare these days, but if I'm home cooking or whatever, I'll put a record on the turntable and go there.
Yeah.
Which, and you're kind of busy, making your own stuff too. So it's like you don't want to get too caught up in.
Yeah, there's influence, and then there's big derivatives.
Yeah, there we go. Look at that.
Hey, perfect, yeah, perfect lead in.
Yeah.
He threw me a free bottle to give that setup. So
Thank you, Blake.
He's going to write the Ballad of Seelbach, and
There we go.
I've got a turntable, and I have some vinyl that is more recent, and then I have some vinyl that I got legit back when that was what they sold, was vinyl, because I'm that old. But I like to listen to some stuff on vinyl every now and then. My younger son, several years ago, we were listening to an album, and it came to the end of the first side, and I said, okay. I said, Sam, you want to turn that over? And he goes, what?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, turn it to the other side. There are two sides? So
I just tried to skip a song, and it
right. You don't get to skip a song. Nobody has that kind of hand-eye coordination anymore to hit that just right. But I do use Spotify a lot. I've got, well over 100 playlists, and our bourbon group meets every month, and there's a theme to it, a playlist to it every time. We do a playlist with every show that we do. So a lot of the music, Blake, that you listed out, I'll pull together a playlist, and it'll be on Spotify, and it'll be included in the show notes. So, so people can go and they can listen to the things that you've talked about. And so,
I ought to share that with everybody I know. If you want real good bourbon drinking music, here you go.
Here you go. There you go.
It's the weirdest hodgepodge of music, but
oh, you'd be surprised.
Yeah,
right. You'd be surprised. Well, Blake, we'll start wrapping things up here, and can't thank you enough for being here with us. It's been a fun time learning more about Seelbach and about what you're doing there, and the whiskey that you've shared with us, and talking some music too. So
absolutely. Thanks for having me. I mean, honestly, been a really fun time. And I think it's just a really cool take to get talking about two things that people can be passionate about. So really cool. I appreciate it.
Sure. Well, thank you very much. And so Blake, tell folks where they can find you on social media and everything.
Yeah. So I guess it's not my personal account, but my first account in the whiskey world is Bourboner. So BOURBONR. And then there's also bourboner.com if you want to see some older posts. And then everything current is now seelbach.com, and then Drink Seelbach on Instagram and Facebook. So check it out. I'm Blake at seelbach.com. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to shoot those my way. So thanks again.
Awesome.
Drew, where can folks find you?
Yep, you can find me on Twitter at DrewCrawley63 and on Instagram at Drew.Crawley63. Choose your viewing experience carefully.
Yes.
One of them is nice, one of them not so much.
we'll try to figure out which one that is. All right, Benji, what's up?
You can find me at Padawan_distiller on Instagram. Follow my distilling journey with Kentucky Artisan and kind of a fun behind the scenes look at what goes on in the industry. So
It really is. It's a great account. I have a lot of fun reading up on that. It's really good. Bourbon Turntable, just Bourbon Turntable on Facebook, on Instagram, on Twitter. You can watch the show on YouTube, or you can listen on your favorite podcast platform. And just be sure to do that. Subscribe, like, share, all that great stuff. And our next show, Drew, is going to be...
Yes, sir. We're talking new whiskey and new music, and then doing a little central thing on Jack White.
Yeah.
That's
Jack
gonna be
White
fun.
is not confirmed yet as a guest. He is not confirmed yet as a guest, but I'll let you know if he responds to my Instagram messages or not.
Sounds about right.
I'm guessing not, but that doesn't mean we won't have fun talking about Jack White. And
is this like it's about like when we tried to have when we had Nancy Fraley on My Whiskey Den, and 2 or 3 times she kept having to cancel, and so people were starting to wonder if we were actually going to have her as a guest. But,
Are you actually talking to Nancy, or is she?
Right.
look,
Right.
she had posted about Leonard Skinner on her Instagram page, and I sent her a message on that, and I said, "Look, you come on Bourbon Turntable, we'll talk about Leonard Skinner, and it'll be awesome." And she liked it.
Right.
Okay, she didn't respond, but she liked it. So
She's a big music fan. She plays the bass. I mean, yeah,
and she's one of the best people I've ever tasted whiskey with. I've only done it like once or twice, and I'm like, at one point I was trying to explain something that I had seen, and I was like, you know what, Nancy, I'm really sorry. I think I just explained something I heard you say in a podcast back to you, so just ignore what I said. I was trying to sound smart, and I just realized in my head I'm an idiot. So.
That's awesome. All right, everybody. Thanks so much to Blake for joining us. Check out seelbox.com and support Blake and support craft distilling at the same time. So until next time, cheers, love, and free bird.
Cheers.
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 Good night, everybody.
Good night.